Hey everyone, and welcome to a cool, independent series that I'm doing about life in outer space. To start off this series, I want to talk about the Drake equation. The Drake equation is an argument for the number of advanced civilizations in the galaxy, based on several quantifiable, or theoretically quantifiable, probabilities. Even though it's an equation, it's not a hard mathematical law. It's not intended to derive a specific number, like an exact 10,240. It's not supposed to be exact like that. The point of the Drake equation is to make a logical argument for the approximate number of active and communicating alien civilizations in the galaxy. The Drake equation, with all of its variables, is as follows. N equals R times F sub P times N sub E times F sub L times F sub I times F sub C times L. Alright, so that was obviously kind of a mouthful, so let me break it down. N is the variable that we're trying to find. It's the number of active, communicative alien civilizations in our galaxy. To approximate this number, N, all of the other variables are multiplied together. These are R, the average rate of star formation in the galaxy, F sub P, the fraction of the formed stars that have planets orbiting them, N sub E, the fraction of those planets that can potentially support life, F sub L, the fraction of those planets that actually do support life, F sub I, the fraction of those planets with life that happen to have an intelligent, civilized species, F sub C, the fraction of those civilizations that have developed communications, and L, the average length of time that those civilizations spend sending out signals. One of the most obvious things about the Drake equation is that most of these variables are entirely unknown. We have a generally good idea about the first few variables, such as the rate of star formation, which in our galaxy is observed to be about 1.5 to 3 stars per year. The fraction of formed stars with planets is observed to be close to 1. This basically means that almost every star we examine, we find at least one exoplanet. Planets seem to be quite common in the galaxy, actually. The number of planets in the habitable zone is much harder to pin down, and there's a lot of debate about it. Estimates range as low as 10% of planets being able to support life, with upper estimates at 40 or 50% of planets able to support some kind of life, even if it's just microbial. This is about all that we can say with decent certainty based on the surge in exoplanet discoveries that have been made in the last decade. All of the other variables are unknown, and we only have our own planet and our own civilization to base our estimates off of. We've never discovered any other alien life or civilizations, so at this point we're just operating in theory. The next variable is F sub L, which is the number of habitable planets that actually do support life. If we look at our own planet, the evidence shows that life emerged shortly after the crust cooled and stabilized. It took several billion years for this life to evolve significant complexity, and it took several 100 million years for that life to evolve sapience. So even though it took a while, it did happen. This means it could theoretically happen on other planets too. Although that brings us to the next variable, F sub I, which is totally unknown and hotly debated. Some argue that this value must be high, as intelligence seems to be a trait that is extremely advantageous, and thus will persist wherever it emerges. Others argue that this value must be low, as out of all the many millions of species that have ever lived on Earth, only one has evolved higher intelligence. Because there aren't any solid data to go off of, and there's such a huge spread in the presented probabilities, it's at this point that the values become truly mysterious, and the Drake equation becomes more of a logical argument or an exercise in philosophy than it is a scientific tool. The next variable is F sub C, the fraction of these emergent intelligent civilizations that send detectable signals out into space, like radio waves or gamma waves or neutron beams or whatever. The biggest issue that I see with this variable is that we probably wouldn't even be able to detect alien communications even if they were happening. Radio signals fade away as they disperse into space. All signals fade away as they disperse and expand into space. The strongest signals we've sent out have already faded away into obscurity. They're so faint that they're practically undetectable. It would take an extremely sensitive radio detector to detect the first TV or broadband signals that we ever sent out. If we were on a spaceship using current radio telescopes to detect our current radio transmissions, we'd only be able to pick up stuff from around a light year away. Consider the fact that we've been transmitting stuff for more than a century, so that means that theoretically we've been sending out radio waves that have gone more than 100 light years away from Earth. But because these lose energy as they expand and go a greater and greater distance, they're only detectable and decipherable out until about a light year away. And as we all know, there aren't any stars or alien planets anywhere close to being within just 1 light year of us. The last variable is L, the length of time an advanced alien species would send radio signals out into space. The typical understanding is that once the requisite technology was created, then the civilization would maintain its use indefinitely, assuming the technology was successfully passed down and regularly used, and assuming the civilization didn't destroy itself through violence. There's also an argument that once a civilization reaches a particular level of technological sophistication, they make themselves immune to all potential threats. If this is the case, their existence would be perpetual and indefinite. On a galactic scale, there would be a steadily growing pool of immortal civilizations that have reached this state. Carl Sagan argued that all of the values in the Drake equation were high, and that the probability of intelligent life existing elsewhere in the galaxy was also high. The only exception that Sagan articulated was the lifetime of a civilization, which he thought would have been relatively low. This is because he was concerned by nuclear war, by nuclear winter, and an atomic holocaust that could wipe out civilization. Sagan was a strong supporter of environmentalism and an influential voice condemning nuclear weapons and the dangers of nuclear war. A lot of the criticism of the Drake equation doesn't necessarily attack the logical structure of the equation itself. The criticisms are aimed at the ambiguity inherent in the unknown variables. We simply don't have the data we need to make hard claims about alien life. How often it appears, how often it develops the complexity necessary for intelligence to emerge, how often that intelligence develops technology and communicates on an interstellar scale. We don't know this stuff. But because we don't have hard data to answer these questions, the Drake equation becomes exponentially more inaccurate and ambiguous as more and more of these unknown variables are factored in. The Drake equation is more of a logical argument, a hypothesis with theoretical values that illustrate a greater point. That point is that the number of planets with alien life and the number of advanced alien civilizations in the galaxy is potentially quite high. But if there are so many civilizations out there, where are they? This is the essence of the Fermi paradox, which I'll explain in the next episode.